All right, what's going on YouTube? This is Boxing Wave. So I read an article on Boxing News 24 basically confirming that Sean Porter and Errol Spence is good to go and that it's going to be a pay-per-view. Okay, this is a fight that a couple months back I thought it was official. Okay, and then found out, weeks back that or at least from Sean Porter and his father's camp, that Errol Spence has not signed his part of the contract. Okay, that Sean Porter signed it a month ago. At least this is what he said in the video, the interview at that time, him and his father. Um, so basically, we was wondering and speculating what's up with that. Made videos. A lot of people recommented, stuff about Errol possibly being on PEDs and he's just trying to shake it off and everything. I already addressed my thoughts on that. I don't believe that's the case, but that's what people were speculating and stuff. Um, Maybe it has something to do with the pay per view. Errol was just maybe scheduling, trying to push the fight to happen at a later time in order for his pay per view to not be so close to Thurman's and Manny Pacquiao. Originally, the fight, at least from what I read, the fight was not supposed to be pay per view. Okay, but then there was reports saying that Thurman and Pacquiao was going to be a pay per view, and then we also heard that Danny Garcia and Mikey Garcia was going to be a pay per view. But that's not a fight that has been signed yet, neither, according to Mikey Garcia. So I don't really know what's going on. But what I do know is that, at a time that I thought the streaming services was taking over, okay, with Top Rank and The Zone, I'm actually surprised at the rise of pay per view. We seem like we're getting more pay per views, this year. I know Wilder and Fury was last year, but it was in December. That was a pay per view. Then Pacquiao Broner was also a pay per view. Mikey Garcia and Errol Spence were a pay per view. Terrence Crawford against Amir Khan, that was also a pay per view. So it seems like, especially when it comes to the welterweight division, it seems like all of these fighters are now, they want to be pay per view in um every fight they have. If these guys are really planning on fighting each other, it seems like every single one of them are gonna have pay per views, and I think there's a reason behind it. All right, now you know me. I've been boycotting the pay per view thing. I haven't paid for any of these pay per views, even though I want to support these fighters. Um, they're not exactly giving us the fights that we want. I think these fights that are coming up are actually good fights, though. I do like Sean Porter and Errol Spence. I do think that's a great matchup, but I don't think that it's a pay per view fight. Um, I also believe that Keith Thurman is and Pacquiao is a great fight. I might actually pay for that pay per view though, because I really love that matchup. That's been a matchup that I've wanted for a long time. Unlike all of the other fights, I thought the other fights weren't pay per view worthy, just a bunch of big names, but really weren't great matchups. And none of these fights, these pay per view fights, lived up to they haven't lived up to being a pay per view fight. I thought Wilder Fury was a very exciting fight because of all the drama involved. But Pacquiao and Broner shouldn't have been a pay per view fight. And I don't think Terrence Crawford against Amir Khan should have been one either. They weren't great fights and mismatches, and just like Broner and Garcia, that was a mismatch. None of these fights were worthy of pay per views, but these are good fights. These are definitely good fights. I think if anyone's a good fight, I expect Pacquiao and Thurman to be a pay per view only because Pacquiao came from that pay per view era. Okay, he's come from that, and the majority of his good fights are pay per view fights. And this is a good fight. So I wasn't shocked when I heard that that was a pay per view. But Sean Porter, even though that's a unification match, I don't believe it's a pay per view fight. But what I see what's going on here is it's a pattern, really. See, the thing is, all of these guys are going to fight each other at some point. Terrence Crawford, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, those are the big names right there, right? At welterweight. being that they've had pay-per-views, they want to they want to be able to have negotiating power. And I think that's the reason why they are forcing the pay-per-views. Amir Khan, Terrence Crawford wasn't a great matchup going into the fight to me. But I understand that Amir Khan has been in a pay-per-view with Canelo. I understand that he has a big name. And Terrence Crawford is a pound for pound fighter. So I understand why they did that. I don't like it, but I understand as far as negotiations why they did it. They want to be able to present something whenever they do the A side, B side, all that garbage. They gonna want that to. They want to present that in negotiations when they do have a unification, whether it's Derman or whether it's Errol Spence. They want to have something to say like, "Oh, this is what we did for this pay per view, that pay per view." Because Terrence Crawford before Khan, the only pay per view he was involved in was when he fought Pat. I think you guys know what I'm saying. The guy from 140, the Jesus Christ, I can't think of his Victor Postal. Okay, and that wasn't a successful one. Um, Good fight, great fight, and I believe that was unification back then. But Postal doesn't have a name like that. So I get what they're doing here. Because Spence just had a pay per view with Mikey Garcia, I guess he wants his own because a lot of people are saying, well, you only did well in that fight because it was Mikey Garcia and his following that brought the pay per view, you know? So I get it. I get it. It's a lot of nonsense, but it's hurting the fans because we're not really getting the fights we want to see. And we're still not really getting the fights we want to see. The fights that we want to see is, I would say, at welterweight, the number one fight is Terrence Crawford against Errol Spence. All right, that's the number one, the most demanded fight right now at welterweight. You know, and outside of those two is probably Thurman against Errol Spence. All right, because of all the build up and all the talk behind that. Sean Porter, good fight, but he's not a guy that sell out crowds. He's just not. He's just not. You know, he's a good fighter. He's a champion, a former champion, a current champion. You know, he's been at welterweight. He's been fighting a low. He's been in the ring with a load of good fighters. All right, but he doesn't have the name. A lot of people don't like him because of his style. With the aggressive style that he has, very physical, a lot of wrestling and stuff. But let's be honest, Pacquiao, he has a name. All right, is he doing the most at welterweight lately? Lately, nah. But he's still Manny Pacquiao. So I understand that. He has a huge following. He's been in there with Floyd Mayweather. He's been in there with a million different people. He's done big pay-per-views, Cotto, De La Hoya, all that shit, all that. Ricky Hatton, he's done the big fights. So we already know what he brings. Let's exclude him because he's not to be compared to these newer welterweights, all right? Um, but yo, I don't like it. I don't like that it's a pay per view, but I understand what they're doing. And if Spence and Porter does well, when I say well, at least 250, 300K type of pay per view, if he's able to do that without a Mikey Garcia, then that would prove that, hey, maybe Errol really is a star, and it wasn't because of Mikey Garcia's following. But if he's gonna drop and the pay-per-views is below 200, then it will show that, okay, maybe he's not as big as a star as he think he is, and he would pretty much be shooting himself in the foot because now you're gonna have a decrease in pay-per-view buys with Sean Porter, and now it'll be more even out when you fight Terrence Crawford. I think that's fight, whenever they do have it, it should be 50-50 anyway. Let's just hope. I'm just hoping the fight happens. But it should be 50-50 anyway. I mean, both of them, they're both great fighters. They both hold a title. Depending on who owns more titles at that point, which should be Errol because Errol has a better chance of unification. You know, he's going to unification now with Sean Porter. If he is to beat Porter, he'll have more belts. If he is to fight Thurman before fighting Terrence Crawford, which I hope not, because it seems like Thurman doesn't want to fight Errol. He seems to keep pushing that off. He's talking the end of next year now, you know, stuff like that. So if he is to be Pacquiao himself, um, but yeah, it looks like Errol has a better chance of getting unifications because of his alliance with the PBC and all of the other welterweights. You know, Terrence is kind of stuck out there by himself. All right, but listen, I don't like the pay-per-views. I never liked the pay-per-views, and I want to see less of them. But it seems like in this division in particular, we're gonna keep getting them because all of these guys have names at this point, and they want to outdo the other fighters. Like Mikey Garcia's, and they want to outdo the competition, and the competition all have pay-per-views. We're gonna keep getting them at this point at welterweight, especially at welterweight. So it's kind of disappointing, but it is what it is. And for the fans that don't have the money to keep affording these pay-per-views, it sucks. Because fans are gonna watch the fight, finds ways to watch the fights anyway. But I just wish they just did get rid of it completely, man. Just get rid of the pay-per-view. I think the fighters should be getting paid, but unless you're getting the fight that we really want, like Terrence Crawford against Errol Spence, that's a pay-per-view fight, legit. you know. And on top of that, they're not even giving us good undercards to these pay-per-views, that's another issue. If you're gonna give us a pay-per-view, you want us to pay more for the fight, give us a great undercard so we can really get our money's worth. That's the key thing. They're not even giving us that. They're giving us the regular generic undercard that we get at every fight. And I don't think that's right. All right. For the people that defend it still, I don't think a lot of people are defending it because they really want to pay for pay-per-view. I think they defend it because they have biases towards certain networks. And I think that's just stupid, because give us a fight. You want to see the fight? Give us the fights we want. Spence, Mikey Garcia, that was a mismatch. That was a mismatch. Broner Pacquiao was another mismatch. You know, even Crawford against Amir Khan, that was a legit welterweight fight. But as far as talent, it was a mismatch as well. You know, you had some Khan fans that came in and said that he's gonna, neutralize Crawford because of his speed, but Khan has been on a decline for a while now. You know, for a while now. So I think that's just some people that are just delusional. And we saw what happened in that fight. Anyway, I love the fight. I just don't want it to be pay-per-view. That's all. All right. Peace.